Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar, 0342 hours. Captain Alexis Monroe stood alone in Warehouse 7, her flashlight beam cutting through darkness thick as motor oil. The air smelled like dust and JP ate fuel and something else. Something wrong. 8 wooden crates sat in the center of the concrete floor, arranged in 2 perfect rows of 4. Each one bore the same black stencil marking, "Personal effects deceased." She had requisitioned these boxes 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of paperwork and signatures and questions from supply sergeants who wanted to know why a logistics officer needed personal effects from Afghan nationals killed 8 months prior. She told them it was for closure, for the families, for the official record. She had not told them the truth, that she needed to know if the 8 people she supposedly killed had ever existed at all. Her boots echoed on concrete as she approached the first crate. The wood was new, clean, no dust, no wear. These boxes had been built recently, shipped with care, delivered with precision, official, legitimate, real. Lex knelt beside the first crate. Her hands found the crowbar she had brought, lifted it, hesitated. For 8 months she had carried their names: Jamal Haddad, Layla Nazari, Omar Rashid, Fatima Kawari, Hassan Malik, Aisha Farouk, Yusuf Salib, Miriam Abud. 8 names burned into her memory like brand marks on skin. 8 faces she saw every night when she closed her eyes. 8 ghosts that followed her from the operations center to the logistics cage to the place she could not call home. The crowbar bit into wood, nails shrieked, the lid came free. Empty. Not empty like someone had removed the contents. Empty like nothing had ever been inside. No dust patterns, no packing material, no residue, just bare wood and the smell of fresh pine and the absolute certainty that this box had never held anything that mattered. She moved to the second crate, faster now. The crowbar sang, the lid clattered against concrete. Empty. Third crate. Empty. Fourth. Empty. Her hands moved without thought. Crowbar, lift, throw, crowbar, lift, throw, 5th crate, 6th, 7th, 8th, all empty, all pristine, all perfectly, impossibly, deliberately empty. Lex stood among the scattered lids and stared at 8 wooden boxes that contained nothing but air and lies. Her radio crackled on her belt, but she did not hear it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she did not feel it. She heard only the sound of her own breathing and the whisper of a question that had been growing louder for 8 months. What if they told me I killed 8 people who never existed? She pulled out her phone. The screen glowed harsh in the darkness. She opened the voice recorder app, held the phone close, and spoke words that would either destroy her career or save her life. This is Captain Alexis Monroe, serial number 7498263, recorded at Al Udeid Air Base, 0346 hours, 15th of March. I have opened 8 crates marked as containing personal effects from 8 Afghan nationals I allegedly killed during Operation Sandstone Crown, 8th of July last year. All 8 crates are empty. No contents, no packing materials, no evidence that anything was ever inside. I am documenting this because either someone removed the contents or these 8 people never existed. Either way, someone lied, and I need to know who, and I need to know why. She stopped recording, looked at the 8 empty boxes one more time. Then she turned and walked toward the door, leaving the lids scattered like evidence of a crime that had not yet been named. Behind her in the darkness, the empty crates sat silent as tombs. 8 months earlier, somewhere in Helmand Province. The ridge overlooked a compound that intelligence said belonged to a Taliban logistics coordinator. 3 buildings arranged in a rough triangle around a central courtyard. Stone walls, flat roofs, guard posts at the corners, standard stuff, textbook target. Lex lay prone on the ridge 600 meters north, her M4 carbine beside her, radio in hand, night vision painting the world in shades of green. Below, 12 operators from the 75th Ranger Regiment moved through the darkness like smoke given purpose. Staff Sergeant Cole Hendricks led the element, his voice coming through her earpiece in short, clipped bursts. Monroe, status on overhead. Gunship 6 is on station, Lex replied. Her voice carried the calm precision of someone who had done this 50 times before. AC 130 at Angels 20, 30-minute playtime, full munitions package. I have positive comms, verified target coordinates, standing by for your call. Copy, we breach in 2 mics. Lex adjusted her position slightly, her eyes scanning the compound through the PVS-14 mounted to her helmet. This was her element. Not shooting, not storming, coordinating. She was a tactical air control party specialist, one of the Air Force's quietest warriors. While Rangers kicked doors, she talked to pilots. While bullets flew, she calculated coordinates. While chaos reigned, she brought thunder from the sky with words and numbers and the absolute requirement for perfection. Because when you called in 30mm cannon fire from an AC-130 gunship, perfection was not optional. It was the difference between dead enemy and dead friends. She watched Hendricks reach the south wall, watched the explosives team place breaching charges, watched the stack form up, weapons ready, bodies coiled like springs. Then everything went wrong in the way that combat always went wrong. Fast, loud, unpredictable. The compound erupted with gunfire before the breach charges blew. Muzzle flashes sparked from windows like angry fireflies. Rounds cracked through the air with sounds like whips snapping. The Rangers returned fire, taking cover, calling targets, moving with practiced efficiency. But they were pinned. 12 men against an unknown number of enemy in hardened positions. The math was simple and unforgiving. Hendricks' voice cut through the radio chatter. Monroe, light them up, north building, troops in contact, need steel now. Lex did not hesitate. This was why she was here. This was the moment all the training built toward. She keyed the radio to the gunship frequency and spoke with the clarity of someone whose words would summon fire. Gunship 6, this is Reaper Control, troops in contact. Request immediate fire mission, north structure of target compound. Coordinates November 37428. I authenticate Tango X-ray, cleared hot. Her notepad showed the coordinates she had written hours earlier during mission planning. November 37428, the north building, where the gunfire originated, where the enemy was. The pilot's response came back instantly. Reaper Control, Gunship 6 copies. November 37428 north structure. Guns, guns, guns. 3 seconds of silence. Then the sky split open, and the AC-130's 105mm howitzer spoke. The sound reached Lex a heartbeat after the flash, a crack like God's door slamming. The round hit with the force of controlled lightning. But it hit wrong. The explosion bloomed south of the compound, not north, not where Lex had called, not where the enemy was, not where the building full of fighters stood, where the Rangers had staged their gear. The secondary explosion came immediately after, the Rangers' spare ammunition cooking off in a fireball that turned night into day. Lex watched through her optic, watched her stomach turn to ice, watched Hendricks and his team scatter from positions they had held seconds before. Hendricks' voice on the radio carried an edge sharper than any blade. Monroe, what the fuck? You hit our staging area. Check your coordinates. Her hands found the notepad. November 37428. She had written it. She had verified it. She had called it exactly. The north building. Not the south. So why had the gunship hit south? She stared at the burning wreckage and felt the first cold finger of something wrong touch the back of her neck. She had called correct coordinates. She knew she had. The pilot had repeated them back. She had confirmed. Everything had been textbook. Everything except the result. The gunfire from the compound intensified. The Rangers returned fire, suppressing, maneuvering, adapting. Hendricks called for extract. Air assets vectored in. The mission became a fighting withdrawal, ugly and loud, and nothing like the clean operation they had planned. Lex stayed on the ridge and coordinated the extract, talking to helicopters, clearing airspace, doing her job with mechanical precision while her mind screamed questions that had no immediate answers. When the last Ranger was wheels up and the compound receded behind them, Hendricks keyed his radio one more time. His voice carried exhaustion and something colder. "Monroe, when we get back, you and I are going to have a conversation about fire discipline and coordinate verification, because that shit almost got us killed." Lex wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to show him her notepad, her coordinates, her precision. But she said nothing, because in combat, results mattered more than intentions, and the results were a burning pile of gear, and a mission compromised, and 12 Rangers who almost died because fire landed where it should not have landed. She looked at her notepad one more time. November 37428. The numbers blurred. The ridge spun. She closed her eyes and saw the explosion replay again and again and again, like a recording stuck on loop. Somewhere between the ridge and the extract helicopter, the first ghost was born. 8 weeks later, she learned its name. The conference room at Bagram Airfield smelled like stale coffee and recycled air and careers ending. Lex sat at a long table, her uniform pressed, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl awaiting judgment. Across from her sat 5 officers whose expressions ranged from disappointed to disgusted to something that might have been pity. Colonel Patricia Whitmore occupied the center chair. 52 years old, silver eagles bright on her shoulders, reading glasses perched on a nose that had seen 3 decades of military service. She held a tablet in her hands like it contained prophecy. "Captain Monroe." Whitmore's voice carried the flat authority of someone who had said these words before. "This board has reviewed the incident of 8th July during Operation Sandstone Crown. We have examined mission recordings, coordinate logs, and after-action reports. Our findings are conclusive." Lex said nothing. The protocol was simple: listen, acknowledge, accept. Whitmore continued. "You called fire mission coordinates that resulted in 8 civilian casualties. Afghan nationals sheltering in the south structure of the target compound. Your coordinates placed fire 400 meters south of intended target. The pilot followed your directions precisely. The error was yours." "Ma'am," Lex kept her voice level, "I called coordinates on the north structure, the enemy position. I verified 3 times before transmission." Whitmore turned the tablet toward Lex. The screen showed a waveform, green lines dancing across black background. Audio recording. Lex's voice, tinny through speakers but unmistakable. "Gunship 6, this is Reaper Control. Coordinates November 37248. Lex's blood went cold. November 37248, not November 37428. The numbers were transposed, 2 and 4 reversed. 400 meters of difference. The difference between north building and south building. The difference between enemy and civilian. The difference between mission success and catastrophe." But she had not said those numbers. She knew she had not said those numbers. Her notepad sat in front of her on the table. She flipped it open with hands that wanted to shake but would not. There, in her handwriting, clear as gospel, November 37428. She looked up at Whitmore. "Ma'am, my notes show different coordinates. I wrote November 37428. That's what I called." "Captain, we have the recording." Whitmore's voice carried finality. "Your voice, your transmission, these coordinates." She tapped the tablet. "Unless you're suggesting the recording was altered." The other officers shifted. One, a Major Lex did not recognize, made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough or contempt. Lex stared at the waveform. Her voice, her words, her coordinates, wrong coordinates. Coordinates she knew she had not called but could not prove she had not called because audio recording was considered absolute truth in after-action reviews. Whitmore set down the tablet and picked up a physical folder. "Captain, your psychological profile shows elevated stress markers over the past 6 months. Increased anxiety, decreased sleep quality, symptoms consistent with operational stress. The flight surgeon recommended evaluation. You declined." "I was managing, ma'am." "Were you?" Whitmore opened the folder. "Because your error resulted in 8 civilian deaths. Afghan nationals who were taking shelter from Taliban activity, families, non-combatants, people who trusted American forces to protect them." She pulled out photographs, 8 faces, brown skin, dark eyes, names printed below in neat military font. Jamal Haddad, age 34, former interpreter. Layla Nazari, age 28, school teacher. Omar Rashid, age 42, shopkeeper. Fatima Kawari, age 19, medical student. Hassan Malik, age 56, village elder. Aisha Farouk, age 32, aid worker. Yusuf Salib, age 29, farmer. Miriam Abud, age 47, nurse. 8 faces, 8 names, 8 lives that ended because of coordinates that Lex had called but not called, spoken through her voice but not by her intention, transmitted through channels she trusted but could not verify. Whitmore arranged the photos in a neat row. "Look at them, Captain. These are the people your error killed. I want you to memorize their faces, because you will carry them for the rest of your career." Lex looked. She forced herself to look, to see each face, to read each name, to burn them into memory because Whitmore was right. She would carry them, whether she had called wrong coordinates or not, whether the recording was accurate or altered, whether this was her fault or something else entirely. She would carry them because someone had to. Whitmore closed the folder. "Captain Monroe, this board's recommendation is administrative reassignment. You are hereby removed from tactical air control party duties effective immediately. You will be reassigned to logistics operations at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. This reassignment is not punitive but corrective. You need time away from operational stress, time to reset, time to prove you can follow procedures without error." "Ma'am," Lex's voice came from somewhere far away. "Request permission to speak." "Granted." "I would like to request access to the original mission audio file, not the transcription, the raw recording, for personal review." The room went silent. The other officers looked at Whitmore. Whitmore looked at Lex with eyes that showed nothing. "Captain, the recording you just heard is the original file. There is no other version. Your request is noted but denied. This hearing is concluded. You have 72 hours to clear your current assignment and report to Al Udeid. Dismissed." Lex stood, saluted, turned and walked out of the conference room with her spine straight and her face blank and 8 photographs burning in her mind like brands. In the hallway outside, she found a bathroom, locked herself in a stall, sat on the toilet lid and pulled out her notepad, stared at the coordinates she had written. November 37428, her handwriting, her certainty. But the recording said otherwise. And recordings did not lie. Except sometimes. A small voice whispered in the back of her mind, sometimes they did. 6 months later, Al Udeid Air Base sprawled across the Qatar desert like a small American city transplanted wholesale into sand. Lex reported to Warehouse 7 at 0600 every morning and spent her days tracking pallets and manifests and supply chains that meant nothing and mattered less. She had become invisible, a logistics officer among hundreds, a former TACP whose name meant nothing to the supply sergeants who brought her requisition forms and the loadmasters who asked about shipping schedules and the junior enlisted who saw her captain's bars and assumed she had earned them behind a desk. They did not know she had called fire missions in the Hindu Kush, did not know she could coordinate close air support with precision measured in meters, did not know she had once been trusted with the kind of power that turned coordinates into thunder. They did not know she had killed 8 people whose faces she saw every night, or thought she had killed them, or been told she had killed them, or something else that lived in the space between certainty and doubt. Major Frank Tesler ran the logistics operation at Al Udeid. 44 years old, prior infantry, multiple combat tour, the kind of officer who remembered what it meant to carry a rifle before he learned to carry a clipboard. He found Lex in the warehouse 3 months into her assignment, watching her inventory pallets with the dead efficiency of someone going through motions. Monroe, his voice carried the rasp of too many years breathing dust. You're too good at this job. Lex looked up from her tablet. Sir. Tesler leaned against a pallet of MREs. I read your file, the real one, not the scrubbed version they gave me. TACP specialist, 53 combat missions, 0 friendly fire incidents until the one that got you sent here. He paused. Something doesn't add up. Sir, with respect, my incident is a matter of record. Is it? Tesler pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, showed her an error message. Access DENIED. Classification above user clearance. I tried to pull your mission audio file. I'm a logistics major with secret clearance. Your file is classified above that. Why would an 8-month-old TACP incident be classified higher than secret? Lex felt something shift in her chest, something that might have been hope or might have been danger. I don't know, sir. Neither do I, but it's not normal. Dead civilians in a fire mission gone wrong. That's unfortunate. It's a black mark. It's a career ender, but it's not classified, unless... He stopped, looked at her directly. Unless it wasn't wrong, unless someone wanted it classified because the truth is more complicated than the official story. Before Lex could respond, a voice interrupted from the warehouse entrance. Major Tesler, Captain Monroe, sorry to interrupt. Technical Sergeant Nina Ortiz stood in the doorway, 27 years old, intelligence analyst, sharp eyes and sharper instincts. She held a tablet, and her expression carried the careful neutrality of someone bearing news that required privacy. Tesler straightened. What do you need, Ortiz? Sir, that requisition you submitted, for personal effects from Afghan nationals killed in Operation Sandstone Crown. Command denied it. No explanation, just denied. Tesler and Ortiz both looked at Lex. Lex looked at the floor. Tesler had submitted a requisition for the 8 people without telling her. Major, her voice came quiet, why would you do that? Tesler's expression softened. Because you deserve to know the truth, and because something about your case bothers me. I've been in this man's army 22 years. I know what cover-ups smell like. Your incident stinks. Ortiz stepped closer, her voice dropping. Sir, Captain, there's something else. The personal effects requisition was denied, but I ran the names through CENTCOM civilian casualty database before I submitted. Standard verification. She paused. Her face showed something between confusion and concern. There's no record, 8 names, 0 matches, no birth records, no death certificates, no next of kin notifications. It's like they never existed. The warehouse went silent. Air conditioning hummed. Somewhere outside, a C-17 spooled up its engines. Lex's heart beat once, twice, 3 times while her brain processed what Ortiz had just said. No record. 8 people. Gone from every database. That's impossible, Tesler said. CENTCOM logs every civilian casualty, every single one. It's required for legal review and compensation claims. I know, sir, Ortiz looked at Lex. I checked 3 times, ran every variation of the names, checked spelling alternatives, cross-referenced with Afghan government records. Nothing. These 8 people have no official existence in any system I can access. Lex felt the floor tilt slightly. What does that mean? Ortiz hesitated, then said 3 words that would change everything. I don't know. But Lex knew with the certainty that comes from 6 months of carrying guilt and doubt and faces that haunted dreams. If 8 people had no record of existence, then either someone had erased them, or they had never existed at all. And if they had never existed, then she had not killed them. And if she had not killed them, then someone had lied. And if someone had lied, then the question became, why? Tesler looked at Ortiz, then at Lex. We need to take this higher. Inspector General, someone who can actually investigate. Sir, Ortiz said carefully, with respect, if this is what I think it is, going to the IG might get us nowhere, or worse. What do you think it is? Ortiz did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice carried the weight of someone speaking truth that could end careers. I think someone used Captain Monroe to eliminate 8 targets under cover of collateral damage. I think those 8 people were not civilians. I think their names were fabricated to create a paper trail that justified grounding a TACP who might ask questions. And I think whoever did this has enough power to classify files above Major's clearance and scrub casualty databases. The 3 of them stood in the warehouse, surrounded by pallets of supplies and the machinery of war, and a silence that pressed down like physical weight. Tesler broke it. If you're right, we need evidence, real evidence, not just missing database entries. I can dig deeper, Ortiz said, but it'll take time, and I'll need to be careful. If someone's watching these files, they'll notice queries. Do it, Tesler said. Then he looked at Lex. Monroe, I need you to do something for me. I need you to write down everything you remember about that mission. Every detail, coordinates, weather, radio calls, everything. Because if we're going up against people with enough juice to alter recordings and scrub databases, we need our story airtight. Lex nodded, started to speak, stopped when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. Unknown number, text message. You're asking the right questions. Keep asking, but be careful who you trust. They're watching now. Check your quarters. Package under bed. From a friend who remembers Helmand. The message included a signature at the bottom, just initials. CH. Cole Hendricks. The team leader from the mission that ended her career. Lex showed the message to Tesler and Ortiz. Tesler's face went hard. That's tradecraft, burner phone, compartmented information. Hendricks knows something. Or he's part of it, Ortiz said quietly. Either way, Lex said, I need to see what's under my bed. They left the warehouse together, walking across the base in afternoon heat that turned concrete into a skillet. Lex's quarters were in a trailer block near the flight line, small and sparse, and exactly like 300 other rooms housing 300 other officers. She unlocked the door, They stepped inside. Lex knelt beside the bed. Under the frame, taped to the metal support, was a manila envelope. She pulled it free, opened it. Inside, USB drive and handwritten note. The note said, "Monroe, you didn't make a mistake. Someone altered your transmission. I don't know how yet, but I know why. The 8 people in that compound were not civilians. They were intelligence assets who discovered something big. Someone wanted them dead and used you to do it. This drive has partial mission footage from my helmet cam. It's not much, but it proves they were alive inside that compound 4 minutes before your strike. I'm going dark after this. Trust Tesla. Don't trust command. Find the others. There are more of us. Good luck, Hendricks." Lex looked at Tesla. Tesla looked at the USB drive. "We need to see what's on that." Ortiz pulled out her laptop, plugged in the drive, triple-clicked. Video file opened. Grainy footage. Night vision green. Helmet cam perspective. Hendricks moving through darkness toward a compound. Stone walls, flat roofs. The exact compound from Lex's mission. Hendricks' voice on the audio track speaking to his team. "Stack up. Breach in 30 seconds. Then the camera swung toward a window. Infrared illuminator clicked on. The interior of the south building became visible through the window glass. 8 people bound, sitting against a wall, hands zip-tied behind backs, hoods over heads. Not civilians sheltering from Taliban. Prisoners. Hendricks' voice again. "Actual Ranger 2-1, I have 8 detainees in South Structure. Repeat, 8 detainees. Request guidance." Radio response, different voice, command authority. "Ranger 2-1, actual. Maintain position. Air asset inbound. Do not approach detainees." "Actual, why is air asset targeting South Structure if detainees are inside?" "Ranger 2-1, maintain position. That is an order." Then the video cut to black. Time stamp. 4 minutes before Lex had called her coordinates. 4 minutes before fire had landed on the south building. 4 minutes before 8 people had died. 8 people who were alive, who were prisoners, who were bound and hooded and waiting. Waiting to be executed. And Lex had been the weapon. The laptop screen went dark. The 3 of them sat in silence. Outside, jets took off with thunder that shook the trailer walls. Inside, the truth sat heavy as lead. Tesla spoke first. "Someone set you up, used you to kill 8 prisoners under cover of combat error." "Who were they?" Lex's voice came hollow. "The 8 people. If they weren't civilians, who were they?" Ortiz was already typing, running searches, cross-referencing. Her fingers flew across keys. Hendricks said, "Intelligence assets. Let me check." She pulled up classified databases, typed names, waited. Results populated. Jamal Haddad, former Afghan intelligence, disappeared 2 years prior, presumed Taliban capture. Layla Nazari, CIA translator, killed in Taliban attack 18 months prior, official. Omar Rashid, no record. Fatima Kawari, no record. Hassan Malik, Pakistani ISI informant, whereabouts unknown. Aisha Farouk, UN investigator, missing 14 months. Yusuf Salib, defense contractor, security clearance revoked, circumstances classified. Miriam Abud, no record. Ortiz looked up from the screen. "These aren't random civilians. These are intelligence professionals, assets, people who worked in classified operations." "Someone collected them," Tesla said, "put them in one place, then used an American airstrike to eliminate them all at once." "And blamed me," Lex added. "Altered my coordinates, made it look like I screwed up, grounded me so I couldn't investigate." "Question is," Ortiz said quietly, "what did these 8 people know? What was worth killing them all to keep secret? Lex stared at the 8 names on the screen. 8 ghosts. 8 people who had died while she called coordinates she thought were correct but were not. 8 people whose blood was on her hands even though she had not pulled the trigger. Or had she? Had those prisoners died from her strike, or had they been dead already? Hendricks' footage showed them alive, but that was 4 minutes before. What happened in those 4 minutes? Before she could voice the question, Tesler's phone rang. He looked at the screen, frowned. "It's my I need to take this." He stepped outside. Lex and Ortiz waited. Through the trailer walls they heard Tesler's voice, muffled, responding to questions they could not hear. He came back inside 30 seconds later. His face had gone gray. "What?" Lex asked. Tesler looked at her with eyes that had seen death before but not like this. "I'm being reassigned, effective immediately, back to the States. They're sending a replacement tomorrow." "Why?" "They didn't say, just orders. Pack tonight, wheels up at 0600. The 3 of them looked at each other. The timing was too perfect, too fast, too convenient. Someone knew they were asking questions. Someone knew about Hendricks' package. Someone was removing Tesler before he could dig deeper. Ortiz stood. "Sir, you can't get on that plane. If you go back to the States, you'll disappear into administrative reassignment hell. We'll never see you again." Tesler's jaw tightened. "I'm a major in the United States Air Force. I don't run from orders. Even when the orders are designed to silence you." Even then. Lex felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Major, thank you for believing me, for asking questions, for trying to help." Tesler put a hand on her shoulder. "Monroe, you didn't kill those people. Someone used you. Find out who, find out why, and when you do, burn them down." He left. Lex and Ortiz stood in the trailer, staring at the laptop screen showing 8 names and 8 faces and 8 lives that had ended in fire and lies. "What do we do now?" Ortiz asked. "We keep digging," Lex said. "Hendricks said there are more of us, more TACPs who got blamed for incidents. We find them. We find out if their missions match this pattern, and we build a case that no one can ignore. That could take months. Then we take months." Ortiz nodded, started to pack up her laptop, stopped. "Lex, if Hendricks is right, if someone is powerful enough to alter transmissions and scrub databases and reassign majors overnight, then we're not just fighting some rogue officer. We're fighting a network." "I know. A network that's already killed 8 people to protect their secret." "I know. And you still want to do this." Lex looked at the screen one more time. 8 faces, 8 ghosts, 8 people who deserved truth even if they could not hear it. "I have to." That night, Lex could not sleep. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling and thinking about coordinates and recordings and truth that lived somewhere between official record and lived experience. At 0200 her phone buzzed, text message, unknown number. Major Tesler had a heart attack during pre-flight physical, dead at age 44. Very sudden, very unfortunate. You should be careful, Captain Monroe. Stress can kill. No signature, no initials, just a threat wrapped in sympathy. Lex sat up, stared at the message. Tesler was dead. A man who ran 5 miles every morning, who passed his annual physical 3 months ago, who had been asking questions about classified files and missing database entries and dead intelligence officers. Dead of a heart attack at 44. Very sudden. Very unfortunate. Very convenient. She deleted the message, opened her laptop, started writing. My name is Captain Alexis Monroe. 8 months ago, I was told I killed 8 people. I did not. Someone used me as a weapon. Someone altered my transmission. Someone framed me for murder. Someone just killed Major Frank Tesler for asking questions. This is my testimony. This is my truth. And if I die, someone needs to know what really happened. She wrote for 3 hours. Every detail, every coordinate, every suspicion, every piece of evidence Hendricks had provided, everything. When she finished, she encrypted the file, sent copies to 3 different secure emails, printed a hard copy and hid it in her wall locker. Then she lay back down and waited for dawn. At 0600 she reported to the warehouse as ordered. New commanding officer stood waiting. Lieutenant Colonel David Kress, Operations Director, sharp eyes, harder smile. Captain Monroe, I'm your new co. I understand you've been asking questions about your incident. That stops now. Major Tesler's death was tragic, heart attack, very sudden. But this base has a mission and you have a job. Do your job, stop asking questions. Understand? Yes, sir. Good, dismissed. Lex saluted, turned, walked back to her duties. But in her pocket, her phone vibrated. Message from Ortiz. I found something. Meet me at Hangar 7 at 1900. Come alone. This is bigger than we thought. Lex looked at the message. Thought about Tesler. About 8 ghosts. About coordinates that had been changed and recordings that had been altered and a truth that someone would kill to protect. Then she thought about 8 faces. 8 names. 8 people who deserved justice even though they were dead. She typed one word in response. Coming. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the desert like an answer to a prayer no one had spoken aloud. Hangar 7 sat at the edge of Al Udeid Air Base where the tarmac met the desert, and the security lights stopped pretending the darkness could be controlled. 1900 hours meant full dark, heat still radiating from concrete like the earth was exhaling anger. Lex walked alone, her uniform blending with shadows, her mind running scenarios that all ended badly. Tesler was dead, a heart attack at 44. The same day he asked questions about classified files. The same day he pulled her personnel record. The same day someone decided he knew too much. Coincidence was a word used by people who refused to see patterns. Lex was not one of those people. Hangar 7's side door stood ajar. Not much, just enough. The kind of opening that said, "Come inside, but be careful." She slipped through, letting her eyes adjust. The hangar held maintenance equipment and tool cages and the smell of hydraulic fluid and metal. Empty aircraft parking bays stretched toward the far wall like the ribs of some enormous mechanical beast. Ortiz emerged from behind a tool cabinet. 27 years old, but her eyes looked older tonight. She carried a laptop bag and an expression that said the news was bad and getting worse. You weren't followed. Ortiz's voice came quiet. No. You sure? As sure as I can be, when someone just murdered my commanding officer and made it look natural. Ortiz flinched at the word murdered but did not argue. She set the laptop bag on a workbench, unzipped it, pulled out her computer. I found something. After Tesler died, I kept digging. If they killed him for asking questions, then the questions must lead somewhere they don't want us looking. What did you find? Ortiz opened a folder on her screen. Files appeared. Mission reports, personnel records, incident reviews, 7 of them. Your case wasn't unique. Over the past 4 years, there have been 7 other TACP incidents. 7 other controllers blamed for coordinate errors that resulted in civilian casualties. 7 other operators reassigned to non-operational duties. Lex stared at the screen. 7 other TACPs. 7 other incidents. 7 other people carrying guilt and ghosts and questions no one would answer. Same pattern, she asked. Every single one. Ortiz pulled up a spreadsheet. Incident date, number of alleged civilian casualties, database verification. Every victim shows the same thing. No verifiable records, no birth certificates, no death notices, no compensation claims. It's like they killed people who never existed. Or people whose existence someone erased. Exactly. Ortiz highlighted a column. And look at the timeline. 1 incident every 6 months for 4 years. Clockwork. Planned. Someone is systematically using TACP controllers to eliminate targets under cover of collateral damage. Lex felt cold despite the residual heat. What are the names? The other TACPs. Ortiz pulled up a list. 7 names appeared. Captain Ryan DeMarco, currently assigned Kuwait Finance Operations. Captain Sarah Voss, currently assigned Germany Administrative Services. Captain Marcus Till, currently assigned Lackland AFB Instructor Duty. Captain Jennifer Hale, currently whereabouts unknown, terminal leave status. Captain James Wong, currently assigned Japan Logistics. Captain Melissa Crane, currently assigned Diego Garcia Communications. Captain Andre Rowlands, currently assigned Djibouti Supply Operations. 7 names, 7 careers ended. 7 warriors turned into clerks and bean counters and people whose skills had been deliberately buried. We need to contact them, Lex said. Find out if they remember their missions the same way I remember mine. Find out if their recordings were altered. Find out if they suspect what we suspect. Already started. Ortiz pulled up email drafts, encrypted, coded language, careful phrasing that said I know something is wrong without saying what. I sent these 2 hours ago, used anonymous routing, no direct connection to either of us. Responses. 3 so far. DeMarco, Wong, and Rowlands, all willing to talk but scared. DeMarco said his incident haunts him every night. Wong said he tried to investigate his case and got threatened by command. Rowlands said something similar happened to an instructor at his old squadron. They're all paranoid, all isolated, all carrying the same weight we're carrying. What about the others? Ortiz's face darkened. Voss is dead. Suicide, they said, 3 months ago, hanged herself in her quarters. No note, no warning signs, clean psychological evaluation 2 weeks before. Another convenient death. Another person who might have asked questions, silenced before questions could become answers. Till and Crane haven't responded. Could be they're scared. Could be they're compromised. Could be they don't believe us. And Hale. Hale's different. Ortiz pulled up another file. She went dark 6 months ago, terminal leave, no forwarding address, no contact information, no social media, no paper trail. It's like she deliberately vanished. Or someone vanished her. That's what worries me. Hale was the first. Her incident happened 4 years ago. She's been carrying this longer than any of us. If she found something, if she knows something, she might be the key. Lex studied Hale's service photo. 36 years old at the time of the picture. Strong jaw, clear eyes. The kind of face that said I've seen combat and it didn't break me. But there was something else in the expression. Something that looked like knowing a secret too dangerous to speak. We need to find her, Lex said. I tried. She covered her tracks well. No credit cards, no bank withdrawals, no airline tickets. She's either dead or she's the best ghost I've ever seen. There's always a trail. Not this time, unless. Ortiz pulled up another screen. I found one thing, property records. Hale's grandmother owned a cabin near Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Remote, off-grid, no utilities. The grandmother died 2 years ago, left the property to Hale. Tax records show someone's paying the bills, but the payments come from a trust with no listed beneficiary. That's where she is. Maybe, or it's where someone wants us to think she is. Only one way to find out. Ortiz closed her laptop. Lex, if we go to Germany, if we track down Hale, we're crossing a line. We're admitting we don't trust the chain of command. We're going operational without orders. They could court-martial us for that. They could, or they could kill us and call it an accident, like Tesler, like Voss. Lex looked at Ortiz directly. You don't have to come. This is my fight, my incident, my ghosts. Wrong, Ortiz's voice carried steel. Tesler was my boss. He asked me to help. Then someone stopped his heart because he got too close to truth. That makes it my fight too. They looked at each other in the dim hangar light. Two women who had signed up to serve their country and found instead they were serving people who used that service as cover for murder. How do we get to Germany? Lex asked. Ortiz smiled. It was not a nice smile. I work in intelligence. I know how to create travel orders that look real enough to pass inspection. We take leave, visit family, coincidentally end up near Ramstein, coincidentally go hiking in the woods, coincidentally find a cabin that may or may not house a missing TACP controller. How long? We can be wheels up in 48 hours. Make it 24. Ortiz nodded, started packing her laptop, stopped. Lex, if we find Hale, if she tells us what she knows, we can't unhear it. We can't go back to pretending we're just following orders and everything is fine. Once we know the truth, we're committed, all the way, whatever it takes. I've been committed since I saw 8 empty boxes in a warehouse and realized someone lied about people I thought I killed. Lex touched the laptop screen where Hale's photo still showed. I'm not looking for an exit. I'm looking for justice. Justice might get us killed. So might staying quiet. They left the hangar separately. Lex first, walking back toward her quarters like someone finishing a normal day of work. Ortiz 10 minutes later, taking a different route. Professional. Compartmented. The way spies moved when they didn't want to create patterns that surveillance could recognize. In her quarters, Lex pulled out her phone, sent a text to a number that wasn't saved in her contacts but was burned into her memory. Need to talk, face to face. You were right about everything. 3 minutes later, response came. Vienna Café Spurl, 3 days from now. 1400 hours, come alone, burn this number, Hendricks. Lex deleted the message. Then she opened her laptop and started researching everything she could find about Captain Jennifer Hale. The file was thin, heavily redacted, but one detail emerged that felt important. Hale had worked with a CIA officer named Miriam Abad, the same Miriam Abad who appeared in the list of 8 people killed in Lex's strike. The connections were forming, pieces falling into place, but the picture they created was darker than anything Lex had imagined. 72 hours later, Lex sat in Café Spurl in Vienna watching tourists drink coffee and eat soccer tort, and pretend the world was simple. The café occupied a corner building with high ceilings and dark wood, and the kind of old-world elegance that came from surviving 2 world wars, and deciding beauty mattered more than efficiency. She had told Ortiz about the meeting. Ortiz had argued against it. Hendricks could be compromised, could be bait, could be leading Lex into a trap, but Lex trusted the evidence Hendricks had provided, trusted the risk he had taken to send that USB drive, trusted the fact that if he wanted her dead, she would already be dead. At 1400 exactly, Hendricks walked through the door, older than she remembered, harder, thinner, the kind of thin that came from living on the edge with limited food and maximum stress. He wore civilian clothes that fit wrong, like someone who had forgotten how to be anything but a soldier. His eyes swept the cafe once, professional, cataloging faces and exits and threat angles. Then he saw Lex and something in his face softened. Not much, just enough. He sat across from her without preamble. "You got out of Al Udaid." "I'm on leave." "No, you're not. You're running. Good, smart. They killed Tesla." "I know. You understand what that means. They're cleaning house. Anyone who asks questions, anyone who gets close, they're removing obstacles." "Why are you still alive?" Hendricks smiled. It looked like something carved into leather. "Because I died in Syria. Official, killed in action, closed casket, flag ceremony, the whole performance. Made it easy to become a ghost." "They think you're dead." "They did. For 5 months I stayed dead. Dug into their network from the outside. Found patterns, names, money transfers. Then I sent you that drive and broke cover. Now they know I'm alive. Now I'm a problem they need to solve." "Why help me? Why risk it?" Hendricks looked at his hands. They showed scars and calluses and the evidence of violence. "Because I led that mission. Because I put you on that ridge. Because when fire landed wrong, I blamed you instead of questioning why. I should have asked questions then. Should have pushed back when they grounded you. Should have done a lot of things I didn't do." He looked up. "I can't fix my mistakes, but I can help you expose the people who made them necessary." A waiter approached. They ordered coffee they would not drink. The waiter left. They leaned close over the small table. "Tell me what you found," Lex said. Hendricks pulled a folded paper from his jacket, unfolded it on the table. A hand-drawn chart. Names connected by lines, dates, locations, patterns. Operation Brushfire. That's what they call it. Started 4 years ago. Conceived by people high enough to have access to communications infrastructure and low enough to get their hands dirty. The concept is elegant. War needs casualties to maintain public support for continued presence. Real mistakes get investigated, cause problems. So they create controlled incidents. Identify intelligence assets who are compromised, too exposed, or know too much. Collect them. Wait for the right TACP to be on duty. Alter the transmission. Blame the controller. Eliminate the targets. Bury the evidence. How do they alter transmissions? Man-in-the-middle attack. Your radio signal goes through multiple relay points before reaching aircraft. One of those relays is compromised. They intercept, modify coordinates, retransmit. Takes seconds. Leaves no trace except the altered audio recording they create afterward to cover their tracks. Who controls the relay? Hendricks tapped a name on his chart. Lieutenant Colonel David Kress, Operations Director, Al Udaid. Lex felt her stomach drop. Kress, her new commanding officer, the man who had told her to stop asking questions the same day Tesla died. "Kress is the technical operator," Hendricks continued. "But he's not the architect. He takes orders. Someone higher gives him targets, tells him which TACP to set up, provides the cover story. Kress just executes." "Who's the architect?" Hendricks hesitated, then tapped another name. Brigadier General Thomas Carver, Al Udaid Base Commander. Carver, Lex had met Carver twice. Change of command ceremonies. Speeches about honor and duty and service. He had seemed genuine, professional, everything a general should be. Carver started this 4 years ago when he was a colonel. He believed, truly believed, that America was pulling out of Afghanistan too early, that we were abandoning gains, betraying allies, letting Taliban win. He couldn't change policy, but he could create incidents that justified staying. Civilian casualties make news. News creates pressure. Pressure delays withdrawal. Every incident bought another 6 months of operations. He killed people to extend a war. He eliminated compromised intelligence assets who would have been killed by Taliban anyway and used their deaths to serve strategic objectives. That's how he sees it. Not murder, not conspiracy, strategic necessity. Lex stared at the chart, at the names, at the lines connecting operations officers and communications specialists and intelligence analysts. 37 people total. 37 officers who knew about Brushfire and either participated or stayed silent. Why TACPs, she asked. Why not just drone strikes? Why not special operations? Plausible deniability. Drone strikes are logged, reviewed, investigated. Special operations are tracked, but battlefield errors, combat mistakes, those happen. Fog of war, heat of moment, easy to explain, easy to bury. And TACPs are perfect scapegoats, junior enough to be expendable, isolated enough to be vulnerable, trained enough that no one questions their presence on operations. What about the 8 targets? Who were they really? Hendricks pulled out another paper. 8 dossiers, brief, classified, redacted in places but readable enough. Jamal Haddad, CIA asset embedded in Afghan intelligence, discovered Brushfire was selling drone coordinates to Pakistani ISI. Layla Nazari, defense contractor translator, overheard conversations about target selection, started asking questions. Omar Rashid, MI6 liaison, British intelligence was investigating American collateral damage patterns, got too close. Fatima Kowari, Afghan police investigator, found evidence of coordination between U.S. operations and civilian deaths, built a case. Hassan Malik, Pakistani informant, worked both sides, threatened to expose Brushfire to Taliban unless paid. Aisha Farouk, UN human rights investigator, compiled report showing statistically impossible pattern in TACP incidents. Yusuf Salib, private security contractor, former Delta, recognized Brushfire tactics, told People. Miriam Abud, CIA operations officer, Hendricks' contact, warned him something was wrong, died before she could say what. 8 people, 8 threats to Brushfire's secrecy, 8 targets collected in one compound and eliminated in one strike. Lex read the dossiers twice, memorizing details, understanding now what the 8 ghosts had really been. Not random civilians, not unfortunate casualties, whistleblowers, investigators, people who saw patterns and asked questions and got close enough to truth that silence became necessary. How many TACPs do they have? 8 total. You were 4th chronologically, 3 before you, 4 after, all grounded, all reassigned, all carrying guilt that isn't theirs. We need to find them, get them to testify. Some of them won't. Crane is compromised. They have blackmail material. She'll never talk till doesn't believe it. Thinks the system is infallible. He'll report any contact to command. What about Hale? Hendricks' expression shifted. Hale is special. She was first, 4 years ago. She figured it out faster than anyone, tried to report it, got threatened, went underground. She's been living off-grid ever since. If anyone has evidence, it's her. If anyone can testify, it's her. But she trusts no one, and she's paranoid enough to shoot first and ask questions later. I need to talk to her. I know, that's why I'm giving you this. Hendricks slid a small object across the table, a coin, challenge coin, 24th Special Tactics Squadron, Hale's old unit. She gave this to me on her last operation. Said if I ever needed to prove I was friend not enemy, show her this. She'll recognize it. Might buy you 30 seconds before she decides whether to trust you or kill you. Where is she? Germany. There's a cabin near Ramstein, her grandmother's place. She's there. Or she was 3 weeks ago when I last made contact. You've been in touch. Briefly, she's careful, uses burner phones, changes locations. But she stays near that cabin. It's the only anchor she has left. Lex took the coin, felt the weight, the history, the promise it represented. What do I tell her? Tell her what we're building. A case, evidence, testimony from multiple TACPs, names, dates, patterns. Tell her it's time to stop hiding and start fighting. Tell her Miriam Abelard deserves justice. Abelard was important to her. Abelard was her contact, the CIA officer who died in your strike. Hale and Abelard were working together, gathering evidence, building a case. Then Brushfire found out, used you to eliminate Abelard and frame Hale for the mission failure. Hale's been running ever since, knowing Abelard died because she got too close, knowing her own life is forfeit if they find her. Lex closed her hand around the coin. I'll find her. I'll convince her. If she doesn't kill you first. Risk I'll have to take. Hendricks stood. Monroe, when this is over, when we expose Brushfire, there will be trials, courts-martial. People will go to prison. Careers will end. Reputations will burn. The Air Force will fight to protect itself. They'll try to bury this deeper than it already is. You need to be prepared for that. Need to be prepared for the possibility that we win the battle and lose the war. Then we make sure we win both. Hendricks almost smiled. Spoken like someone who hasn't fought bureaucracy. Good luck, you'll need it. He walked out of the cafe, disappeared into Vienna streets. Lex sat for 10 more minutes, finished her cold coffee, paid the bill. Then she left through a different door and took 3 separate taxis to 3 different locations before finally returning to her hotel, where Ortiz waited with news that was both expected and unwelcome. Cress knows we left Al Udeid, Ortiz said. He put out an inquiry, checking our travel orders, verifying our leave status. We have maybe 48 hours before he figures out the orders are fake. Then we have 48 hours to find Hale and get back. And if we don't, then we're AWOL, and everything we found becomes inadmissible because we broke chain of command to find it. Great, no pressure. They left for Germany that night. Commercial flight to Frankfurt, rental car to Ramstein area, then hiking into woods that grew thick and dark and older than the wars that had scarred the land around them. The cabin sat 3 kilometers from the nearest road, accessible only by foot trail that barely qualified as a path. No electricity, no running water, no connection to the world except satellite phone that may or may not work depending on weather and paranoia. They approached at dawn, slowly, carefully, making noise so they would not be mistaken for threats. Lex carried Hendricks' coin in her hand like a talisman. Ortiz carried a white flag improvised from a t-shirt tied to a stick. The cabin looked abandoned. Windows dark, door closed, no smoke from chimney, no signs of life. Then a voice came from somewhere to their left, female, cold, carrying the absolute certainty of someone aiming a rifle at center mass. Stop walking, drop your packs, put your hands where I can see them. You have 10 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't shoot you for trespassing. Lex raised her hands. Ortiz did the same. Their packs hit the ground. Captain Hale, my name is Alexis Monroe. I'm TACP. I was part of Operation Sandstone Crown. I know what happened to Miriam Abelard. I know about Brushfire. I know you've been running for 4 years. Cole Hendricks sent me. He said to show you this. She held up the coin. Challenge coin from 24th Special Tactics Squadron. It caught morning light and glinted like a promise. Silence, long enough that Lex started wondering if Hale had already decided to shoot. Then movement. A figure emerged from behind a tree 20 meters away. Woman, mid-30s, lean, hard, holding a rifle with comfortable competence. She walked closer but kept the rifle aimed at Lex's chest. Jennifer Hale looked like someone who had been at war for 4 years and forgotten how to stop. Her hair was cut short and ragged. Her clothes were functional and worn. Her eyes showed the kind of alertness that never fully relaxed. She stopped 10 feet away, close enough to see the coin, far enough to shoot if necessary. Hendricks gave you that. 3 days ago, Vienna. What did he tell you? That you were first. That you figured out Brushfire before anyone else. That Miriam Abelard was your contact. That she died in the strike I called. That you've been gathering evidence ever since. Hale's expression did not change. How many others? 7 TACPs total, 2 dead, 1 compromised, 4 scared. You're the only one who went ghost. For good reason. They killed Abelard, killed Voss, killed Tesla. They'll kill you too if you keep asking questions. Probably, but they'll kill more people if we don't stop them. More TACPs, more targets, more years of Brushfire continuing because no one had the courage to expose it. Hale lowered her rifle. Not much, just enough. What do you want from me? Your testimony, your evidence, your help building a case that no one can ignore or bury or explain away. And when that case goes to people who are part of the network, when it gets classified above our clearance, when it disappears into bureaucratic hell, what then? Then we go public, media, Congress, Inspector General, leak it so thoroughly that it can't be contained. Hale studied her for a long moment, then she looked at Ortiz. Who's she? Technical Sergeant Nina Ortiz, intelligence analyst. She found the pattern, found you, she's with us. Is she prepared to die for this? Ortiz stepped forward. Her voice carried no hesitation. Major Tesler died because he asked questions. I helped him ask those questions. That makes his death my responsibility. So yes, I'm prepared to die to make sure his death meant something. Hale looked between them. 2 women who had followed orders their entire careers and found that sometimes orders were wrong and following them made you complicit in murder. She seemed to make a decision, lowered her rifle completely. Come inside. I'll show you what I have, but understand this. Once you see what I've seen, once you know what I know, you can't unhear it. You can't go back to being good soldiers who trust the system. You become what I am, a ghost, an exile, someone who chose truth over career and lost everything because of it. Already lost everything that matters, Lex said. Career, reputation, sleep. The only thing left is justice. Hale almost smiled. Then welcome to the club, population 3. They followed her inside the cabin. It was sparse, functional. The walls were covered with papers, charts, photographs, maps. 4 years of investigation compressed into a room that looked like a detective's war room or a paranoid's nightmare or both. Hale gestured to the walls. Operation Brushfire. Everything I could find. Names, dates, money transfers, communication logs. 37 officers involved. 463 targets eliminated over 4 years under cover of collateral damage. 8 TACPs used as unwitting executioners. $60 million in classified funds redirected to maintain the operation. Lex stared at the walls. The scale was larger than Hendricks had described. 400 targets, not just the 8 in her strike. Hundreds of intelligence assets and investigators and whistleblowers eliminated because they threatened Brushfire's secrecy or challenged the narrative that American presence was necessary. How did you get this? Ortiz asked. Miriam was CIA, she had access. Before she died, she copied files, sent them to me encrypted. I've been decoding them for 4 years, verifying, cross-referencing, building the case she died trying to build. Why didn't you go to Inspector General? Hale's laugh was bitter. I did 2 weeks before Miriam died. Filed a formal complaint, detailed evidence, requested investigation. You know what happened? My complaint was classified. The IG investigator was transferred. My commanding officer called me in and told me I was displaying signs of paranoid ideation, recommended psychological evaluation. When I refused, they grounded me, said I was unfit for duty. That's when I knew. The network protected itself. Going through channels was suicide. She pulled out a folder, thick, heavy, filled with documents. This is everything: copies, backups, encoded, distributed to 5 different secure locations. If something happens to me, it gets released automatically. That's the only reason I'm still alive. They know I have a dead man's switch. They know killing me triggers exposure. Lex took the folder, opened it, saw names she recognized: Kress, Carver, others, colonels, majors, captains, all part of the network, all complicit. Then she saw a name that made her blood freeze. Major Frank Tesler. Financial transfers, communication logs, meeting notes. Tesler had been part of Brushfire, not an investigator, not a victim, part of the network, one of the 37. No, the word came out before Lex could stop it. Tesler was helping us. He submitted the requisition. He asked questions. He died because he was getting too close. Hale's expression carried something like pity. Tesler died because he tried to blackmail Whitmore. He wanted a bigger cut, threatened to expose the operation if she didn't pay him. She decided killing him was cheaper than paying him. His death had nothing to do with his questions and everything to do with his greed. Lex felt the world tilt. Tesler, the sympathetic commanding officer, the man who seemed to believe her, who pulled her file, who submitted requisitions, all of it had been manipulation. He had not been trying to help her find truth. He had been trying to find out how much she knew so he could report back to Whitmore. He played me, she said quietly. He played all of us. That's what they do. They identify threats. They get close. They manipulate. They control. That's how networks survive, not by force but by infiltration. Ortiz was reading another section of the folder. Her face had gone pale. Lex, there's more. Your mission. The coordinates that got altered. Tesler was the one who requested you for that operation. He made sure you were the TACP on duty that night. He set you up. The rage came slow and cold and absolute. Tesler had not just been part of the network. He had been the one who destroyed her career, who got 8 people killed, who made her carry guilt that was not hers to carry. And when she started asking questions, when she started getting close to truth, he had pretended to help while actually guiding her away from anything that would expose his own involvement. Then he had gotten greedy, and Whitmore had killed him, not because he was helping Lex, but because he was a liability. How do we prove this? Lex asked. How do we prove Tesler's involvement without his testimony? Bank records, communication logs, financial transfers, it's all here. Circumstantial but comprehensive. Add testimony from multiple TACPs. Add Hendricks' evidence. Add my files. Add your experience. It becomes overwhelming. No one can ignore it. No one can bury it. Unless they kill all the witnesses. That's why we move fast. Contact the remaining TACPs. Get their testimony, compile everything. Then we release it simultaneously to multiple authorities, make it too big to suppress, too public to cover up, force the system to respond. Ortiz pulled out her laptop. I can start compiling now. Create encrypted packages, distribute to secure servers, set up automatic release if we don't check in at scheduled intervals. Make it impossible to stop the exposure even if they kill us. Hale nodded. Good, but first we need to get the testimony. DeMarco, Wang, Rowland said they'd talk. We contact them. Record interviews, get everything on record. What about Crane and Till? Forget them. Crane's compromised. Till's a true believer. They'll report any contact. We work with who we have. They spent the next 6 hours in the cabin, compiling evidence, cross-referencing files, building a case that was ironclad and comprehensive and so damning that no amount of classification could hide it. Lex called DeMarco from a satellite phone, recorded his testimony. 20 minutes of detailed description of his incident, how his coordinates were perfect, how fire landed wrong, how he was blamed, how he tried to investigate and got threatened, how he carried the guilt for 3 years before realizing someone had set him up. Wang's testimony came next, then Roland's, each one adding details, each one confirming the pattern, each one proving Brushfire was systematic, intentional, and ongoing. By sunset, they had 7 hours of testimony, 400 pages of documentary evidence, and a digital trail that connected 37 officers to a conspiracy that had killed hundreds and framed 8 TACPs for crimes they did not commit. "This is enough," Hale said. "This is what Miriam died trying to get. This is what 4 years of hiding bought us. Now we take it to people who can act." "Who?" Lex asked. "Inspector General is compromised. Chain of command is compromised. Who do we trust?" "Air Force Office of Special Investigations, but not the local office. We go to D.C. headquarters. We hand-deliver this to the director. We demand immediate investigation. We threaten to go public if they don't act within 48 hours. That's a long flight, a lot of time for them to find us. Then we split up. 3 targets are harder to track than one. You take one copy, I take one, Ortiz takes one. We fly different routes, meet in D.C., deliver simultaneously. They can't stop all 3 of us." It was a good plan, professional, compartmented, the kind of thing that might actually work if they moved fast and stayed lucky and nobody betrayed them. Then Lex's phone buzzed, text message, unknown number. "Captain Monroe, this is Colonel Whitmore. We need to talk. Return to Al Udeid immediately. If you cooperate, I can protect you. If you run, I cannot guarantee your safety. You have 12 hours. Lex showed the message to Hale and Ortiz. Hale read it and shook her head. "It's a trap. She wants you back on base where she controls the environment. Don't respond. Don't engage." But Ortiz was thinking, her analyst brain running scenarios. "Wait, what if it's not a trap? What if it's an opportunity?" "Explain," Lex said. "Whitmore thinks you're alone, scared, isolated. She's offering protection in exchange for silence. What if we play along? What if you go back, wear a wire, get her confession on record?" "That's insane," Hale said. "Whitmore will search her, find the wire, kill her." "Not if the wire is good enough. Not if we do it right. Intelligence has access to equipment that's undetectable, subcutaneous, embedded in clothing. We can wire Lex so thoroughly that even a strip search won't find it." Lex understood what Ortiz was suggesting. "You want me to bait her, make her think I'm willing to deal, get her talking." "Exactly. Whitmore's smart, but she's arrogant. She thinks she's already won. She thinks TACPs are broken and scared. She thinks you're just another case to manage. If you come back looking desperate and willing to cooperate, she might let her guard down, might say something incriminating. And if she doesn't, if she just kills me, then Hale and I still have the evidence, still make the delivery. Your death becomes part of the case, proof that they're willing to murder to protect their secret." It was cold logic, the kind of calculation that intelligence analysts made. One life against hundreds of potential victims. One sacrifice to secure evidence that could end Brushfire forever. Lex looked at Hale. "What do you think?" Hale was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised them both. "I think Miriam would have done it, would have walked into that room knowing she might die, would have taken the risk because stopping Brushfire was worth any price." She looked at Lex directly. But Miriam's dead, and I've been running for 4 years because I wasn't brave enough to do what she did. So I'm not going to tell you to be brave when I've been a coward. You're not a coward, you survived. You built the case. You kept Miriam's evidence safe. I hid, there's a difference. Hale touched the folder on the table. But if you go back, if you confront Whitmore, you're not hiding, you're fighting. And maybe that's what we should have been doing all along. Lex made her decision. Wire me, get me everything you have, then send me back. I'll get the confession. I'll get proof that's admissible in court. And then I'll walk out of that room and we'll burn them all down. And if you don't walk out, then you burn them down anyway. Just make sure my name gets cleared when you do. Ortiz pulled out her phone, started making calls to contacts in Germany who could provide equipment. Military intelligence community was small. People knew people. Ortiz knew someone at Ramstein who knew someone who had access to surveillance technology that didn't officially exist. 20 hours later, a man arrived at the cabin. No uniform, no identification. Civilian clothes that screamed intelligence operative. He carried a medical bag and an expression that said he'd done this before and asked no questions because questions got people killed. The subcutaneous recording device was smaller than a grain of rice, inserted beneath the skin near Lex's ribs with local anesthetic and surgical precision. The man worked fast, 15 minutes, stitched the tiny incision, applied liquid bandage, handed Lex a small remote no bigger than a button. Press this to activate. Battery life 48 hours. Transmits to satellite. Signal is encrypted and relayed to secure server. Even if they find the device, they can't decode the transmission. He embedded 2 more devices in her jacket collar and boot heel. Both looked like normal seams and stitching. Both recorded audio with clarity that would be admissible in court. You're carrying 3 separate systems, he said. They'd have to find all 3 to stop the recording. And even then, transmission is already happening. What you say gets saved in real time. He left the same way he came. No names exchanged. No payment discussed. Just professional courtesy among people fighting the same shadow war. Lex stood in the cabin wearing 3 recording devices and carrying a story about being scared and alone and willing to cooperate. Preparing to walk into a room with a murderer and trust that technology and courage would be enough. Ortiz hugged her. Don't do anything stupid. Get the confession, get out, we'll handle the rest. Hale handed her Hendricks challenge coin. Take this. Reminder that you're not alone, that people are counting on you, that Miriam and Tesla and all the others died for truth that you're about to expose. Lex took the coin, felt the weight. Then she walked out of the cabin and down the trail toward a rental car that would take her to Frankfurt Airport and a flight back to Qatar, and a confrontation that would either end Brushfire or end her. The plane touched down at Al Udeid at 0600. Colonel Patricia Whitmore was waiting on the tarmac, personal escort, VIP treatment. The kind of attention that said this conversation was important and private and probably lethal. They drove to the intelligence building in silence. Whitmore's expression was neutral, professional, giving nothing away. They walked through empty corridors. Early morning meant few personnel. Most of the base slept while conspirators moved in darkness. They reached a conference room, windowless, soundproof, swept for surveillance. The kind of room where secrets were discussed and decisions were made, and sometimes people went in but did not come out. Whitmore sat across from Lex at a small table. She studied Lex for a long moment. Then she leaned forward slightly and spoke words that the 3 recording devices captured with perfect clarity. Captain Monroe, let's talk about what you think you know and what you're willing to forget. The recording devices were already transmitting. 3 separate systems capturing audio, encoding it, relaying it through satellite uplinks to servers that Ortiz controlled from Germany. Every word Whitmore spoke was being saved in real time, stored, encrypted, backed up, made permanent. Colonel Patricia Whitmore sat across the conference room table like a woman who had played this game before and never lost. 52 years old, silver eagles bright against desert camouflage, eyes that showed calculation instead of concern. She had killed Tesla with a phone call, had grounded 8 TACPs with altered recordings, had orchestrated murders disguised as collateral damage for 4 years. And now she was offering Lex Monroe a choice between silence and survival. Lex folded her hands on the table, her posture suggesting submission when everything inside her screamed resistance. The subcutaneous device near her ribs felt like it was burning, though she knew that was impossible. Psychological. The weight of knowing she was recording a confession that would either destroy careers or get her killed. Whitmore leaned back in her chair. Captain Monroe, you've been asking dangerous questions, traveling to places you shouldn't travel, meeting people you shouldn't meet. That concerns me, not because I want to hurt you, but because I want to protect you from consequences you don't fully understand. Lex kept her voice level, scared but not broken. The performance required precision. Ma'am, I just want to know what really happened. 8 months ago, the mission, the coordinates, I know I called them correctly. I know something went wrong. I need to understand why. Do you? Whitmore's expression showed something like sympathy, false sympathy, the kind calculated to manipulate. Because understanding might be more painful than guilt. Guilt you can carry, guilt you can manage, but truth changes everything. I'm willing to risk that. Whitmore studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into a folder and pulled out photographs. 8 faces. The same 8 faces Lex had memorized. Jamal Haddad, Layla Nazari, Omar Rashid, Fatima Kawari, Hassan Malik, Aisha Farouk, Yusuf Salib, Miriam Abad. These 8 people, Whitmore said quietly. You were told they were civilians. Afghan nationals taking shelter from Taliban. That was a lie. A necessary lie, but a lie nonetheless. Lex forced herself to look surprised. Ma'am. They were intelligence assets. CIA, MI6, defense contractors, people who worked in classified operations and knew things that made them dangerous, compromised, exposed, the kind of assets that get people killed if they're not handled carefully. Handled how? Whitmore's smile was thin. Eliminated, before they could be captured by Taliban, before they could be turned, before they could reveal operations that needed to stay secret. Someone had to make that call. Someone had to authorize their removal, and someone had to execute it in a way that wouldn't raise questions or trigger investigations. You used TACPs. We used combat operations. Battlefield errors are unfortunate but understandable. Fog of war, heat of moment. Nobody questions a TACP who makes a mistake under pressure. Nobody investigates too deeply. It's clean, it's deniable, and it's necessary. The recording devices captured every word, every admission, every detail that would be admissible in court. Lex felt her heart hammering but kept her breathing steady. She needed more, needed names, needed scale, needed the full network. How many, Lex asked, how many operations like mine? 8 TACPs over 4 years, multiple operations per controller, 463 targets eliminated, all under cover of collateral damage, all blamed on operator error. All buried in classified files that nobody can access without clearance that nobody has. Why are you telling me this? Whitmore leaned forward, her voice dropped, became almost intimate. Because you're smart enough to have figured most of it out already. You found the other TACPs, you talked to Hendricks. You went to Germany and found Hale, you compiled evidence. You built a case. I'm impressed. Genuinely. Most people would have accepted their guilt and moved on, but you pushed. You asked questions. You refused to stay buried. So you're going to kill me? No, Whitmore's expression shifted. I'm going to recruit you. Operation Brushfire continues. We need TACPs who understand what we're doing, who can be trusted with the truth, who won't break under pressure. You've proven you have that strength. You survived 8 months of guilt. You investigated despite threats. You're exactly what we need. Lex stared at her. The offer was real. Whitmore was serious. She wanted Lex to join the conspiracy, to become part of the network, to trade justice for survival and complicity. And if I refuse, then you become a problem that needs solving, like Tesla, like Voss, like everyone else who got too close and wouldn't cooperate. Whitmore pulled out her phone, showed a photograph. Your friend Ortiz, she's currently in custody. General Carver has her in a holding facility. If you cooperate, she goes free. If you refuse, she has an accident, falls downstairs, hits her head. Tragic but explainable. The threat was clear. Join or watch Ortiz die. Cooperate or become another convenient casualty. The choice was designed to break resistance, to make survival seem like the only rational option. But Lex knew Ortiz wasn't captured, knew she was safe in Germany with Hale, knew the photograph was old, taken weeks ago. The bluff confirmed something important. Whitmore was desperate, losing control, making mistakes. Lex made her voice small, defeated. What do you need me to do? Whitmore's smile was genuine this time. Victory smile. First, tell me everything you've compiled, every piece of evidence, every contact, every file. We need to know what we're containing. Then we'll discuss your new assignment, something operational, something that uses your skills properly. I have files on my laptop in my quarters. Good, we'll retrieve them together. Then we'll bring Ortiz in, explain the situation, give her the same choice. With both of you on board, we can contain this, move forward, continue the mission. Whitmore stood, extended her hand. Welcome to Brushfire, Captain Monroe. You're doing the right thing, the hard thing, but the right thing nonetheless. Lex took her hand, felt the cold skin, the confident grip, the absolute certainty of someone who thought she had won. She shook once, released. Ma'am, before we go, I need to know, the 8 people in my strike, were they really compromised, really dangerous? Or was that just the justification? Whitmore hesitated, then answered with something that might have been honesty or might have been final manipulation. Does it matter? They're dead. You're alive. The mission continues. That's what matters in the end. Not guilt, not justice. Mission success. The recording devices caught every word, every admission, every piece of evidence that would destroy Whitmore in court. But Lex needed more, needed the full network exposed. Who else knows? Who else is part of this? Lieutenant Colonel Kress runs technical operations. General Carver provides top cover. 34 other officers at various levels handle logistics, communications, and cleanup. We're not some rogue cell. We're an organized network serving strategic objectives that politicians lack the courage to authorize officially. And the 8 TACPs, what happens to us? You integrate, you accept your role, you move on. 4 of the 8 have already done that, quietly, efficiently. 2 refused and paid the price. Now you and Hale get to choose. And I suspect once Hale sees you've joined, once she realizes resistance is futile, she'll make the smart choice too. Perfect names, numbers, confirmation of conspiracy, everything needed for prosecution. The door opened. Lieutenant Colonel David Kress entered, Operations Director, the man who had told Lex to stop asking questions the day Tesla died. He looked at Lex with something like approval. Monroe's in, he asked Whitmore. She's in, smart girl, knows when to fold. Cress nodded. Good, Carver wants to see her, verify the commitment personally, make sure she understands the stakes. They walked Lex through corridors. Early morning meant skeleton crew, perfect for moving someone who might need to disappear. They reached General Carver's office. He waited behind a desk that smelled like coffee and old paper. Brigadier General, base commander, the architect of Operation Brushfire. He looked tired, not guilty, not evil, just tired. The exhaustion of someone carrying weight for too long. Captain Monroe. His voice was formal but not cold. Colonel Whitmore tells me you understand the situation, understand why Brushfire exists, understand the necessity. Sir, I understand you believe you're protecting American interests. Do you agree? Lex chose her words carefully. I think eliminating intelligence assets who are compromised is logical. I think using TACPs as cover is clever. I think the operation is well designed. Carver studied her, but 400 targets seems excessive, and framing 8 TACPs seems cruel, and killing Tesla and Voss seems like you're protecting the operation more than protecting America. Silence. Cress's hand moved toward his sidearm. Whitmore's expression hardened. Carver just looked sad. You're right, he said finally. It became about protection, about continuation, about maintaining something that should have ended 2 years ago. I started Brushfire to extend American presence in Afghanistan, to buy time for allies, to prevent Taliban victory. But somewhere along the way it became self-sustaining. A machine that consumed targets and operators and truth in service to its own existence. The confession was unexpected, raw, the kind of honesty that came from exhaustion and maybe regret. Then why continue? Lex asked. Because stopping means exposure, means courts-martial, means destroying 37 careers and proving that American military operations included assassination programs disguised as combat errors, means giving enemies propaganda, means betraying everyone who participated under promise of protection. I can't do that, won't do that, so we continue, we contain, we survive. Even if that means more deaths. Even then. Lex looked at the 3 officers, Carver with his exhaustion, Whitmore with her calculation, Cress with his readiness for violence. 3 people who had started something that might have been justifiable and let it become monstrous. 3 people who knew they were wrong but chose continuation over accountability. And 3 people who had just confessed everything on recordings that were streaming to servers Ortiz controlled. Sir, Lex said quietly, I lied, I'm not joining Brushfire, I'm ending it. She pulled open her jacket, showed the recording device embedded in the collar, watched their faces shift from surprise to rage to fear in the span of 3 heartbeats. Cress drew his sidearm, Whitmore lunged forward, Carver just closed his eyes. The door burst open. 6 Air Force Office of Special Investigations agents entered with weapons drawn and badges displayed and the absolute authority of federal law enforcement. Leading them was Colonel Paul Briggs, OSI commander, 50s, hard face, harder eyes. General Carver, Colonel Whitmore, Lieutenant Colonel Cress. You're all under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You have the right to remain silent. The agents moved fast, weapons secured, handcuffs applied, rights read with mechanical precision. Carver went quietly, accepting the inevitable. Whitmore fought and had to be restrained, cursing Lex with words that would have made sailors blush. Cress tried to run and was tackled by 3 agents who showed no mercy. Briggs approached Lex. Captain Monroe, well done. The recordings came through perfectly. We have everything we need. Lex felt dizzy, relief and adrenaline and delayed fear all hitting at once. Ortiz, they said they had her. Technical Sergeant Ortiz is fine. She's in the command center with my team. Has been for the past 6 hours. Whitmore's threat was a bluff. We knew about it. Let it play out to add kidnapping to the charges. How long have you been investigating? Briggs hesitated, just for a moment, but Lex caught it. Something in his expression, something that didn't quite fit. 2 weeks since Tesler died. His death triggered automatic review. I found irregularities, started digging, found Hendricks, found Hale, found you. Realized Brushfire was bigger than anyone suspected. Needed confession to make the case airtight. You provided that, thank you. There was something wrong with that answer. 2 weeks wasn't enough time to build the kind of operation Briggs had just executed. The surveillance, the timing, the coordination. This had been planned longer, much longer. But before Lex could question it, Ortiz appeared in the doorway, alive, unharmed, looking at Lex with relief and respect and something that might have been pride. They hugged without words. 2 women who had risked everything and survived. Hendricks emerged from behind Ortiz. He looked at Carver being led away in handcuffs and something complicated crossed his face. Monroe, you did it. You got the confession. You ended it. We ended it, your evidence. Hale's files, Ortiz's analysis. It was all of us. Still, you were the one who walked into that room, who took the risk, who closed the case. He extended his hand. Thank you. She shook it. Will you testify at the court's martial? Already agreed to. Briggs has me lined up as primary witness. Briggs, that name again. Something about him bothered Lex. The way he had appeared at exactly the right moment. The way he knew exactly where to find Hendricks and Hale. The way his investigation had moved with precision that suggested foreknowledge rather than discovery. But exhaustion was winning. The adrenaline crash was coming. Lex pushed the suspicion aside. Told herself she was paranoid from too many lies and betrayals. Told herself that sometimes good people did good work and that was enough. She would learn later how wrong she was. The next 6 months became a mission unlike any Lex had flown before. No aircraft, no coordinates, no fire from the sky. Instead, Colonel Briggs assigned her to track down 7 TACPs and convince them to testify against the network that had destroyed their careers. Think of it as reconnaissance, Briggs said during her first briefing. You're gathering intelligence, human intelligence, the most important kind. Captain Ryan DeMarco was first. Kuwait, Finance Office, Day 3 of Lex's assignment. She found him after hours, alone in his office, surrounded by spreadsheets that blurred into meaninglessness. A half-empty whiskey bottle sat beside his computer. Not hidden, not secret, just there. The way alcohol became furniture when someone stopped pretending they weren't drinking to forget. DeMarco looked up when she entered, saw her uniform, saw the TACP badge. Something in his face crumbled. You're one of us, he said, not a question, a recognition. Lex sat across from him without asking permission. Operation Sandstone Crown, 8 months ago, you called coordinates. Fire landed wrong, 8 civilians died. They told you it was your fault. DeMarco's hands started shaking. How did you know? Because the same thing happened to me, and 5 others, and they lied to all of us. She spent 4 hours with him, showing evidence, explaining Brushfire, proving his coordinates had been correct and someone had altered his transmission and used him as an unwitting weapon. When she finished, DeMarco sat silent for 10 minutes. Then he cried, great heaving sobs that shook his whole body. I thought I was broken, he said when he could speak. Thought combat had damaged my brain, made me incompetent. I almost ate my gun twice. Would have done it if I had kids to think about. You're not broken. You were betrayed, and now we're going to make them pay for what they did." DeMarco agreed to testify that night. 3 days later, he was back in therapy. 6 months later, he would return to TACP duty. But that night, in a finance office in Kuwait, he just sat and cried and let someone witness the weight he'd been carrying alone. Captain James Wong, Japan, different approach. Wong didn't drink, didn't cry, didn't break down. He just didn't sleep. Lex found him at 0300 running laps around the base track, mile after mile, punishment miles. The kind you ran when dreams woke you screaming and going back to sleep meant seeing children burn. "The children in my strike," Wong said without stopping his run. "I see their faces every night, hear them screaming, smell them burning." Lex ran beside him, matched his pace. They weren't children. Intelligence confirmed it. Taliban fighters using youth as cover. You saved American lives by taking the shot. Wong stopped running, stared at her. "How do you know?" She showed him the evidence. The real casualty reports, the intelligence assessments, the photographs that proved his targets had been armed combatants, not civilians. Someone had altered the after-action report, changed ages, changed circumstances, made him believe he'd committed murder when he'd done his job perfectly. Wong read everything 3 times, then asked one question: "Can I go back to flying?" "Yes." He agreed to testify immediately. Later, Lex would learn he slept through the night for the first time in 18 months. No dreams, no screaming, just sleep. Captain Andre Rowlands, Djibouti, the first TACP targeted by Brushfire, 4 years of carrying guilt. Rowlands was harder, not because he didn't believe, but because believing meant accepting that 4 years of his life had been stolen. 4 years of guilt and shame and believing he was too damaged to do his job. 4 years that could never be recovered. Lex didn't try to convince him with evidence. She just sat with him, 3 days, answering questions, explaining patterns, letting him process at his own pace. On the 3rd day, he looked at her with eyes that had aged a decade. "I thought I was broken. Thought combat had damaged something in my brain that made me incapable of doing my job. You're telling me I was never broken, just betrayed." "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Rowland's testimony would later be described by prosecutors as the most devastating they'd ever heard. Calm, precise, delivered with anger that made defense attorneys flinch and judges lean forward to hear every word. Captain Marcus Till, Lackland Air Force Base, true believer, the hardest case. Till taught the next generation of TACPs while believing he'd killed 9 civilians through incompetence. He taught them how to verify coordinates, how to double-check transmissions, how to never make the mistakes he'd made. Except he hadn't made mistakes. Someone had made them for him. He refused to believe it, argued that conspiracy theories were for people who couldn't accept human error, insisted Lex was reading patterns into randomness, rejected evidence as circumstantial and explainable. She spent 2 weeks presenting bank records, communication logs, testimony from Carver himself, recorded during his confession. Till watched video of Carver admitting that Till's mission had been an intentional elimination of Pakistani intelligence officers who had discovered Brushfire, officers who were eliminated under cover of Till's error. Till sat silent for 10 minutes after the video ended. Then he said one sentence that would haunt Lex for months. "I dedicated my career to this institution, and it used me like a weapon it could discard." His testimony destroyed every defense argument about systemic error versus intentional conspiracy. The prosecutors would later say Till's precision made their case airtight. The jury needed only 2 hours to convict. Captain Melissa Crane, Diego Garcia, the compromised one, blackmail material, photographs, evidence of violations. Crane was terrified, certain that testifying would get her killed or imprisoned or both. She had good reason. The photographs Brushfire held were real. The violations were real. She had broken rules and now faced consequences either way. Lex spent a week negotiating with prosecutors. Immunity deals, witness protection, guarantees that testimony would shield Crane from unrelated charges. It took another week to convince Crane the deals were real, that protection was possible, that justice mattered more than fear. Finally, Lex showed Crane photographs of the 8 CIA officers who had died trying to stop Brushfire. They didn't have a choice. They found out and got killed for it. You have a choice. Testify and live, or stay silent and let their deaths mean nothing. Crane testified, then disappeared into witness protection. New name, new city, new life. Lex would never see her again, but prosecutors would later confirm her testimony filled gaps that other witnesses couldn't address. Captain Sarah Voss, dead, supposedly suicide, but Lex investigated anyway. She found the apartment where Voss had supposedly hanged herself, found discrepancies, bruising patterns that suggested struggle, not self-harm, fiber evidence that indicated Voss had been moved after death, security footage showing 2 men in civilian clothes entering the building the night Voss died. She tracked those men through facial recognition to a vehicle registered to a shell company, traced the company to accounts funded by Brushfire, proved murder, added it to charges against Whitmore, made sure Voss's name was cleared posthumously, made sure her family knew she died fighting corruption, not surrendering to it. Captain Jennifer Hale, no convincing needed. Hale had been ready to testify for 4 years, had been gathering evidence and waiting for the moment when testimony would matter. When Lex told her trials were scheduled and protection was guaranteed, Hale cried for the first time since Miriam Abbott had died. She testified for 16 hours across 3 days, detailed every operation, named every conspirator, provided documentation that defense attorneys could not refute or explain. Her testimony was comprehensive, devastating, the kind of evidence that eliminated reasonable doubt and left only certainty. The courts-martial took 8 months, 37 defendants, hundreds of charges, conspiracy, murder, fraud, violations of military law and federal statute and international convention. The trials were held in closed session because classified operations were involved, but summaries were released, details were made public, media covered it extensively, Congress demanded investigations, international observers filed protests. General Thomas Carver was convicted on all charges, sentenced to life imprisonment at Fort Leavenworth, reduction in rank to private, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, dishonorable discharge. He sat through sentencing without expression, accepted punishment without appeal. Later he wrote a statement that was released to media. I believed I was extending American influence to protect allies and prevent Taliban victory. I was wrong. Not about the goal, about the methods, about the price, about believing that ends justified means. They never do. Means become ends, and I became exactly what I thought I was fighting. Colonel Patricia Whitmore was convicted on all charges plus 2 counts of murder for Tesler and Voss, sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She showed no remorse throughout trial, maintained that Brushfire had been strategically sound and morally justified, that only her execution had failed, not her concept. The military judge who sentenced her said something that made headlines. You believed you were protecting America. You were protecting a criminal conspiracy. You believed you were serving strategic interests. You were serving yourself. You believed you were a patriot. You were a murderer. Lieutenant Colonel David Kress took a plea deal, testified against Carver and Whitmore in exchange for reduced sentence, 20 years imprisonment, dishonorable discharge. His testimony closed gaps in the prosecution case and ensured conviction. The other 34 officers received sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years. Some cooperated, some fought, all lost. Then came the revelation that changed everything. During the trial of junior operations officers, evidence emerged that someone had been guiding Brushfire from outside the immediate network. Someone with access to intelligence. Someone with authority to provide targeting information. Someone who had been involved from the beginning but had managed to stay hidden. Whitmore, facing life imprisonment, decided loyalty had limits. She testified that Colonel Paul Briggs had approached Carver 4 years prior, had pitched Operation Brushfire as strategic necessity, had provided initial target lists, had connected the network to foreign intelligence services willing to pay for American strikes, had taken the largest share of $60 million in payments. And when the operation began falling apart, when Hendricks started investigating, when Lex started asking questions, Briggs had positioned himself to contain the exposure by pretending to investigate what he had actually created. The revelation came during week 6 of trials. Briggs was arrested in his office at OSI headquarters. He fought. 3 agents were injured subduing him. He was charged with conspiracy, racketeering, murder for hire, and treason. His trial became the longest and most complex of all the courts-martial. Lex testified against him, described how he had recruited her, how he had used her to get confessions, how he had positioned himself as savior when he had been puppet master all along. She looked at him across the courtroom and saw nothing but calculation, no remorse, no guilt, just anger at being caught. "You used all of us," she said during testimony. "Carver, Whitmore, the TACPs, even the investigators. You built a network and then investigated it so you could control the exposure, so you could bury evidence, so you could protect yourself while pretending to protect justice." Briggs smiled, actually smiled. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for, Captain. Yes, I designed Brushfire. Yes, I positioned myself to contain it when exposure became inevitable. And yes, I would do it again. Because someone has to make the hard decisions that politicians won't make. Someone has to protect American interests even when that protection requires moral compromise. I'm not ashamed of what I did. I'm proud." The courtroom went silent. Even his defense attorney looked shocked. Briggs was convicted on all charges, sentenced to death by military tribunal, became the first officer sentenced to execution for military conspiracy since World War II. He appealed. Appeals were denied. 3 years later, sentence was carried out by lethal injection at Fort Leavenworth while protesters argued whether justice had been served or martyrdom created. Lex did not attend the execution. She was teaching that day. 1 year after Briggs' arrest, Lex stood at CIA headquarters in Langley, Memorial Wall. 8 new stars, 8 names that had been secret were now public. The ceremony was small, private. Families and the people who had fought to make sure these deaths were acknowledged. Jamal Haddad, Layla Nazari, Omar Rashid, Fatima Kawari, Hassan Malik, Aisha Farouk, Yusuf Salib, Miriam Abud. 8 intelligence officers who had discovered conspiracy and died trying to stop it. 8 people whose names had been used as ghosts to cover murder. 8 individuals who deserved recognition and received it finally. The CIA director spoke briefly, acknowledgement of sacrifice, promise that their work had not been in vain, that Brushfire had been exposed, that justice had been served, that their names would be remembered. Lex stood at attention through the ceremony. When it ended, she approached the memorial, touched each star, spoke 8 names quietly. I didn't kill you, but I was used to kill you, and I'm sorry, and I promise your death stopped something monstrous. I promise your sacrifice mattered. I promise you're remembered. Hendricks appeared beside her. You did good work, Monroe. We all did. They stood in silence. Two warriors who had learned that sometimes the enemy wore the same uniform, that sometimes orders were wrong, that sometimes duty meant disobedience and honor meant rebellion. 2 months later, Lex stood in front of a classroom at Hurlburt Field, Florida. 30 TACP candidates, all learning to coordinate fire from sky. She wrote 8 names on the whiteboard. These 8 people died because a TACP was used as an unwitting weapon. That TACP was me. I called coordinates I thought were correct. Someone altered my transmission, changed the numbers, turned my precision into murder. For 8 months I carried guilt that wasn't mine. Then I found out the truth. Then I spent a year making sure everyone involved paid for what they did. She turned to face the class. You will be blamed for things you didn't do. You will be used by people who see you as tools, not people. Your duty is not to follow orders blindly. Your duty is to execute orders correctly. And if orders are wrong, if they violate law or ethics or basic humanity, your duty is to refuse. After class, a student approached. Ma'am, how do you know when orders are wrong? You'll know, your gut will tell you. The challenge is having courage to listen. Her phone buzzed. Message from Ortiz, now Master Sergeant, full-time OSI investigator. New case, Navy. 3 pilots blamed for hospital strike. Coordinates altered. Pattern matches Brushfire methodology. Different network, same concept, need your help. Lex stared at the message, felt purpose surge. Not quite anger, not quite anticipation. More like understanding that justice was continuous campaign, that exposure of one conspiracy revealed others. She typed one word, coming. 3 days later, she investigated Navy pilots blamed for strikes they didn't call. 3 months after that, 6 officers were arrested. 6 months after that, 3 pilots were exonerated. One pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, asked Lex to teach her to investigate, to find patterns, to build cases. Chen joined OSI 6 months later, became one of their best investigators, would help expose 2 more conspiracies before she was 30. 5 years after the first empty box, Major Alexis Monroe sat in her office at Hurlburt Field. Captain's bars had become Major's oak leaves. TACP instructor had become OSI consultant. She taught during the day and investigated at night. Her phone rang, unknown number. Monroe. Major Jennifer Hale found something. New pattern, Air Force and Army both. 8 TACPs over 3 years, all blamed for coordinate errors. Database shows victims have no records. Sound familiar? Lex felt cold. Another Brushfire. Smaller, different leadership, but yes, same methodology, same exploitation. What do you need? Your help, your expertise, your willingness to walk into rooms with conspirators and get confessions that end careers. Lex looked at her classroom schedule, at her comfortable life teaching and consulting. Then she thought about 8 ghosts, about TACPs carrying unearned guilt, about systems that protected conspirators and sacrificed operators. Send me the files. Roger that. And Monroe, thank you for everything, for not giving up 5 years ago, for exposing Brushfire, for making sure we can fight this fight. Miriam would be proud. We're not done yet. Won't be done until every conspiracy is exposed and every TACP is protected. Agreed, see you tomorrow. The call ended. Lex sat in her office looking at the wall where she kept 8 photographs. The CIA officers who had died trying to stop Brushfire, whose deaths had led to exposure, whose names were no longer ghosts but honored dead. She walked to the window, watched aircraft take off into Florida sky, F-35s, A-10s, AC-130s, the weapons she had once coordinated with words and numbers and precision. Somewhere out there, another TACP was being set up, another warrior being used, another conspiracy unfolding because people with power believed they could act without accountability. But they were wrong, because warriors were watching, were hunting, were building cases and exposing networks and proving that justice might be slow but was ultimately inevitable. Lex picked up her phone, called Ortiz. New case, Air Force and Army, 8 TACPs, Hale's briefing us tomorrow. Always what time? 0700, bring coffee and evidence protocols. They're all complicated, that's why they need us. Lex ended the call. She had lesson plans to finalize, students to train, warriors to prepare for careers that would test their skill and integrity. She opened her laptop, pulled up a document she'd been writing for 5 years, a memoir, a testimony, a warning about the price of blind obedience and the necessity of moral courage. The document was nearly finished, 1 chapter left, the epilogue. She typed the final words. They thought we were tools, weapons they could use and discard. They thought our guilt would keep us silent. They thought classification would keep them safe. They were wrong. We asked questions, we built cases, we exposed truth, we stopped them. But we didn't stop fighting, because there will always be another conspiracy, another network, another person with power who believes they can act without consequences, and there will always be warriors willing to stop them. Warriors who chose truth over career, justice over survival, honor over obedience. We are the 8 who were framed. We are the 8 who fought back. We are the voices of the 8 who died trying to expose what we finally destroyed. We are not victims anymore. We are hunters, and the hunt never ends. She saved the document, closed the laptop, walked out into Florida afternoon where aircraft flew and warriors trained, and somewhere in the machinery of American military power, another conspiracy waited to be exposed. The ghosts were quiet now, not because they had been silenced, because their truth had been spoken, their names had been honored, their deaths had accomplished what they intended. And Major Alexis Monroe walked across the base, knowing that some battles ended but vigilance was eternal, that she had been used as a weapon once and would never allow anyone else to be used that way again. The sky was clear, the aircraft were loud, the mission continued. Always. I researched this case for months. What struck me most? 8 warriors carried unearned guilt for years, believing they'd failed when they'd been betrayed. Question for you. If your failure was someone else's crime, would you fight back or protect your pension? 7 controllers faced that exact choice. The real files remain classified, but Monroe's case changed how coordinates are verified today. What hit hardest? The empty boxes, the wire, the memorial? Comment below. If you served or know someone who did, subscribe. These stories honor those who chose duty over orders. Next week, a SEAL who resigned rather than obey. Don't miss it.